Think of this for a moment. How do you get a happy, fulfilled life? How do we create such a thing? Well, the trick, the secret lies in the word create. How do you create that for yourself? So many people go throughout life and are not really happy. They don't really feel fulfilled with the life that they're living. I mean, it's not that strange. There are times for me personally as well where I might not be happy. I might not feel as fulfilled as I want to be concerning the state of my life, my world itself. So how do we create something better? Well, another thing, another angle that we should keep in mind is our habit patterns. It's based on when you wake up in the morning, what are you doing? What is the first thing in the morning that you're doing? Most people are totally unconscious of what they're doing. They just wake up and they get into action based on a certain pattern that they most likely have been following for a couple of years now, perhaps for most of their lives. Now that's very fascinating, because depending on the habit pattern that you have, it might already set you up for not having a fulfilled life. Imagine that. You know, if your habit patterns are all screwed up, you can't have a positive life. That's pretty clear. So what do you want to do? Well, I'm not saying that your habit patterns are bad, because I don't know what they are. I can only tell you that if you feel like you're not happy and living a fulfilled life, perhaps you want to start looking at what you most often do throughout your day. That's the word. What I mean by that is, what are some of the main activities that you're involved in? Now, I'm not talking about necessarily your job. I'm talking about the main activities that you do when you're not working, when you're at home or whatever you're doing, when you basically have that so-called free time, where you can decide for yourself what you would do. Now the question becomes, what are you doing during those hours, during those minutes, during those seconds? Because if you're like most people, and I'm just also going to talk about myself here, I know that there's many times in my past and even in this current time where I have to be kind of careful with it. You might indulge in, let's say, negative thinking, mindless activities, staring at videos online, watching movies, TV series, etc. for hours on end during your so-called free time. Now people would reason I'm doing this because it's my free time. It's time for me to relax, Reneil. I worked all day, I just want to relax. I don't want to work, I don't want to do anything. And that actually makes sense. And I tell these people, I would say to them, yes, go ahead, enjoy it. But if any of these same people ever complain about the state of their lives, well then I would have to say, well, start looking at how you're spending your free time. There's no other way around it. Because the way you're spending your time will ultimately determine the direction in which you go in life. So which direction are you facing at throughout your day? Again, that's the question. What are you doing with your free time? What are your habit patterns? The way to discover your habit patterns is, again, to just look at what you habitually do throughout a day. It can be activities that might be detrimental to you creating a better life for yourself, or it could be on a mental realm where you're thinking, feeling in negative terms, making that a detrimental cause, making it detrimental for you to look and grow towards a better life for yourself. Now, once you have figured out what your habit patterns are, and you realize some of them are to your liking, aren't to your benefits, well then we want to start changing them. Well, how do you start changing a habit? I guess a better question to ask ourselves during those situations is to wonder, well, what causes something to become a habit? Well, as they say, something becomes a habit if you do it often enough on a regular basis. When it reaches a point that you do it unconsciously, where it's just part of you, part of who you are. Now imagine building a habit of focusing on all the good things that you can find in your world, on the good qualities that you possess as a human being. If you're in the habit of looking at those positive aspects throughout your life, throughout your days, well, you could see it's kind of like obvious that you're gonna be living a happier and more fulfilled life because of that habit. Again, we don't want to overcomplicate these things and be like, what sort of mystical thing should I be doing in order to create a better life? How should I apply the power of my thought imagination? How do I change time, space, reality around. All of that stuff actually changes around according to your habit patterns as well. Again, this is another angle. The way we most habitually live determines where we will grow. I know for myself, one habit that I have developed is always on a regular basis. Not necessarily daily, but actually many times I do it daily though, throughout the last decade at least, is to study the mind. I study inspirational books that you can find out there. I listen to other inspirational teachers. I just listen to it. It's like such a habit for me to just listen to it and think about it. Another habit that I've developed is that I can read the same book over and over and over again. And now we're not talking about a fictional book, we're talking about an inspirational book. Again, this might be a habit you want to develop for yourself, because I have talked to other people who might, well, they read an inspirational book, but because they're not in the habit of really studying it yet, after reading it, they put it down, and then they can repeat a few points to me, where they're like, yeah, I need to use my thoughts in this manner. It's freaking awesome, Renew. But then as time goes on, because they're not in the habit of studying, truly studying their own minds, they also start to forget. It starts to sink back into their subconscious mind, where they're not really aware of what they're doing throughout their days again. So that's why it's a good habit to have, to reread a book over and over and over again. Literally, it might sound annoying, it might sound boring even, but if you're reading an inspirational book, what you'll notice is every time you read it, the second time, the third time, the fourth time, the fifth time, it's like you discover more and more about yourself, and you learn more from the information itself, even though the text doesn't change. That's what I've experienced. I learn more and more, even after reading the same book hundreds of times. There are a couple of books that I've been reading for almost a decade now, or actually, now that I look at the date, the year, it has actually been a decade. Like some of these books that I have, I bought them at the end of 2009. So yeah, it would almost be a decade, let's put it like that. I mean, that's kind of crazy to some people that I would have a book surrounding me for that long. But again, it's because we're in the habit of, when we're thinking about reading a book, the habit is to think of reading a fictional book. Again, change that habit around. Change your perception around. The habitual perception you hold concerning certain things in your world. Because once you change that around, you can improve your life. So a happy, fulfilled life depends on your habit patterns, you could say. Now, really taking careful self-observation again of your own life. How do you spend your time? How do you spend your days? When you're not at work or when you're not in college? Because those activities can always distract us, because we're like focused on making money or on our studies to get that degree or whatever. But there's always hours, vacations, holidays, whatever. There's time, a lot of time in our lives that we might spend in a totally unproductive way. And it's not meant to be harsh or to say that that is bad that you're doing that, because no, you deserve free time, you deserve to relax. This is very true. But again, if you feel like you're not living a happy, fulfilled life really in the depths of your heart, well then you really want to start self-reflecting again. You want to reflect on your own life and dare to look at what you want to improve. And the improvement, another way to look at changing your habits, because they are created over a certain period of time, another way of changing them is to look at a habit that you don't like, but that you're indulging in on a regular basis, and you ask yourself, what is the polar opposite of this habit? So you could write that out. What is the polar opposite of the habit that is now holding you back, you feel? Once you write that out, you can look at it for yourself. You have the answer right there. All the answers you ever need lie within your own consciousness. Again, this is all about exercising that wonderful consciousness that you have, that you are. That power that you really are. So you see the polar opposite habit that could set you free from what is holding you back right now. And what are you going to do then? Well, once you've wrote it out, I want you to start focusing on that new habit every single day and become better at living according to that habit, little by little, every single day. You see, it's not that difficult, it just takes discipline. You know, the ability to give yourself a command and follow it. That is what it takes. And sometimes, in some areas, we lack severe discipline where we should need it. And that isn't bad. It doesn't mean there's something wrong with you. But it does give you a hint on what needs to be done in order for you to create that happy, fulfilled life for yourself. And you can do this, starting wherever you are. You can start from right where you are with whatever you've got. Because the only thing you really need is your own consciousness. And thankfully, you have one, otherwise you wouldn't be listening to this message. So really take it to heart. Really think about the habit patterns you indulge in. And then, write down the polar opposite habits according to the ones that are holding you back. So you can see what would set you free. And then, create that freedom for yourself. Allow your own mind to set you free. With that being said, dear viewer, never forget that we are the dreamers.